Hello, everyone.
Yay! Hi!
Welcome to the Deep Take Project. I am here with Rosemary. She is a heart healing practitioner, and she's also the founder of Lots of Love Club. And I'm so excited to kind of dive in and just hear more about your journey. So I want to just kind of start off with, you know, on on social media and just in general, you kind of have this focus on activating hearts, healing. You even mentioned, and I want to quote you, right? Activating hearts to connect conscious relationships. Rosemary, can you tell me a little bit about what that means and kind of where that stems from?
So that's actually something that I came up recently because throughout 2020, I felt really like through my healing process, I felt really lost of exactly what it is that I put out there and be of service for others. And so that's something that really has been resonating with me recently is just really activating hearts. And I've always been the type of person who has been conscious about my relationships and how it really helps me on my healing journey and how we can all expand together consciously. And so by doing so, you have to activate your heart first. You have to open up your heart to be open to those perspectives and to that energy, and to be more consciously aware of yourself, the relationship with yourself, first of all, because that's like the relationship you have 24/7, and like the relationship you have with others as well, to have them be a reflection for your relationship for yourself. And so it all, when it comes to relationships, it all just really circles back to me and how I can heal myself and how I can activate my heart and how I can open my heart, because then that is a ripple effect for others to activate and open their heart as well and go through that healing process. So I hope that made sense. That was just something that came through
Oh,
because I've never really explained it before. So that's an amazing question that you asked, just like off the bat.
yeah, that's really amazing, and I feel that too. With the things that you share, online, and just the community that you've built. It feels like a very safe space for people to activate their hearts and kind of support each other through that journey. So I'm curious, like, where does it start? What can you tell me about the moment in time where you felt that you needed to activate your heart and kind of what set you on this journey of healing?
So for me, it was more natural. Like it is one of those things. It was funny because I talked about my friend or to this about my friend where the things we're really good at, we don't recognize that we're good at it unless somebody else points it out. And so it's something like activating and opening my heart has been something that has been more natural for me to do, even though I didn't realize I was doing it. Uh, because like I mentioned earlier, like I'm just that type of person to really reflect on the relationships that I have in my life and how they like the experiences that I have with them can help me become a better person and a more loving person. Um, and so, yeah, through this journey, I mean, looking back, I always suffered from imposter syndrome of like when I first started, I'm like, who am I to tell these people about like love and relationships? Where really most of my life, probably like the past 10, 15 years of my life, I've always been that person of like, to be like, what lesson am I learning from this relationship? And really asking myself specifically, what lessons of unconditional love am I learning from this relationship so that I can not only love myself more, but I could love others more, and really just continue to expand that because love is infinite. And through what we've learned from media of like what we believe love is, like that's where all of my pain came from, like thinking that love is like a certain like this and like put in a box like this or and so through that hardship and that pain and all the heartbreak, I recognized that those were here to for me to experience so that I can understand what isn't love, so that when I do expand my heart, then I recognize that, oh, this is the expanding universal love that's here that really is to support me, to help me rise and help me grow. And yeah, it's been an ongoing journey.
Yeah, no, I feel like it almost feels like the journey of healing just doesn't stop. Like
Yeah.
there is no point where you're like, all right, I think I'm fully healed. It's like, oh no, there's that trigger, there's that thing again, there's
Mhm.
that repression, there's, it's always something new. But I think everything that you just said was, super, super wonderful. And I'm also just wondering too, like, can you kind of explore with us and talk about maybe like a relationship that you had, or maybe something that you had experienced with like a family member that kind of brought you to this journey and kind of inspired you to head on to this path?
Oh man, there's like a lot of relationships.
Yeah.
Well, for like overall, like my family, I had a lot of childhood trauma. I actually don't remember much of my childhood, but I just know intuitively that I went through a lot of like traumatic experiences. And so bringing those out and putting those into the surface so I can face them and heal those has been quite a challenge since like I said, I don't really remember them. But from what I do remember, most of them are through my romantic relationships. So all the people that I've dated and, have been intimate with. But specifically, I don't know if you're familiar with the term twin flame, but not one of my, but my twin flame, I've known him for like 16 years. And we've had a really on and off relationship. And that was the most heartbreaking one for me, because it was just one of those relationships that really brought out the shadow parts of myself, the parts that I really didn't want to see in myself. And because I didn't want to face them, it just kept happening over and over and over again until I finally faced them. And I think the really big moment that helped me just move forward from that and break that cycle was when I expressed gratitude for all the pain that I experienced through our relationship, not blaming him for the pain, but recognizing that the triggers that I had through our relationship were because of my karmic cycles and because they were coming up for me to recognize in myself and to heal within myself. And so that's like the really short story. But he actually was one of the reasons why I went into the film industry, which is what I did before all of this work. And so going through that, experiencing that, and recognizing that I loved it, but at the same time, I knew there was something missing. It felt like something was missing. And when I finally quit my last job as a videographer, I just felt like starting Lots of Love Club, and it kind of just domino affected into what it is now, and it's always changing.
Wow, wow. Yeah, that's super awesome. And I kind of want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier, is that you kind of are brought up with like this idea of what love should look like, right? Like through media and movies. And you kind of struck a chord with me because growing up, I think I I watched a lot of romantic films, and
Same.
that was all
500 Days of Summer
I was
was my favorite.
How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, like all these romantic comedies, right? And that was all from like my family, like the women in my family, right? But growing up, like I had this skewed idea of what love should look like. And I really, like as a child, I thought like, oh, love should look like this push and pull, sort of this like emotionally heavy type relationship. And then like I soon realized like, oh wait, that doesn't work. And that
Mhm.
doesn't really align with like who I am and kind of what my process is. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, I want to know, like, did you have that sort of, realization going through your process, like with your relationship? You said it was kind of off and on, and your twin flame. So I imagine that it was super intense. Was
Mhm.
there? Can you kind of talk to me about a moment in time within that relationship where you were like internally extremely triggered, and kind of like how you went through that process and how did you navigate that?
Well, for the last 2 years, so for the most part, like I have a neutral relationship, or like I'm friends with the people that I used to date, except for my twin flame. And so for the past like year and a half, we somehow reconnected again serendipitously after 3 years. And we were good. Like we were hanging out like every once a month, going out to eat. And then suddenly I actually went to a reading, and I actually learned that he was my twin flame. So I was like, of course, I was like, oh my God, this all makes sense. Like,
Right.
it's just been so intense. And so with that knowledge, I actually got really attached to the label of twin flame, and really recognizing that I was not really having my hopes up, but I was having all these visions of like, oh yes, we're going to get back together because we're twin flames, we're meant to be, that's like our soul destiny. But because of that attachment, because it was attachment and it wasn't love, that's why it was so painful. And so with when I, expressed the gratitude for all the pain that I went through and the triggers that I went through, that really allowed me to help release those attachments that I have, those cords that I have, because every connection that we have with somebody, or even with like material items, we have these cords. And something I love to do is to help release those cords, so that we can essentially have that clean slate energetically within ourselves, and just be more of our whole self. And so, yeah, I mean, I didn't express gratitude to them. Well, okay, so here's this is like a side story. So this all happened in a week. So it was a Monday, and I was actually I was with somebody at that time. And so that Monday, we actually decided to move forward as friends, because we just recognized that our paths were separate, or like going on our own paths, and that our cycle together as partners were ending. And so that Wednesday was when I sent this really long text to my twin flame, expressing gratitude for like all the lessons that he's taught me about love. And then that Friday, well, that Saturday is when I actually recognized that at the time, one of my really good friends was actually meant to be my partner. And so then we aligned as divine life partners, on that Saturday. So that was a really big turning point for me, of like allowing yourself to let go of that energy can really bring in something even more beautiful. And it, like when we were talking about love and like having these ideas of what love is, it was one of those things where on Thursday night, I kind of just woke up in the middle of the night and I realized, wait, I think J-Roll's my partner.
Wow.
And so I kind of sat with it on Friday, and then we went to an event together, and we actually did like a joint reading with our friend Eric, not having the intentions of like, oh, are we supposed to be together? Just like, what's our soul connection? And like, I'm here to help him bring out his emotions. He's here to help me to step more into my power, because he's a Leo. So he's like all all like, yeah, like
Yes.
look at, well, not like look at me, but like he's not afraid to be in the spotlight. um
That's amazing.
but yeah, on that Saturday, I just expressed to him, I was like, hey, I feel like we're supposed to be partners. And he was very shocked, because he's like, wait, what? And then, but it was one of those things where like, he expressed that he started to have feelings, and then he knew that I was with a partner, but he did not know that we, went on our separate paths that same week. So that was a really big turning point for me in my relationships, and recognizing the power of letting go and expressing gratitude for the really hard stuff that you go through in your life.
Oh, yeah. What year was that? Was that more recent?
That was in 2019. So that was the week of June 24th, uh, because we became partners on June 29th. So whatever, minus 5 days.
Oh, that's amazing. So, wow, I mean, that's a true representation of like when you let go of things, it really, brings room to new and more beautiful, healthier things in your life. So basically you were kind of in this like off and on relationship with your twin flame, right? How long was that going on for?
mm, I want to say we first got together romantically like 8 years ago, but I've known him for 16 years, because we actually met when I was in sixth grade. And it was so funny because he was that quiet person just sitting on the side after school. And my intuition was like, I'm going to go talk to this person. And yeah, and then it was one of those things where he went to a different high school. I went to a different high school. We didn't talk, but somehow Tumblr brought us together, and we started going to raves together, and just kind of sparked that relationship again, but in a more romantic and intimate way. And so from there, it just has been like that off and on for probably like 5, 8 years. I don't. Time is just blending in together. So, but yeah, long story short, it was off and on through our specific relationship. But for the most part, any of my other relationship, they weren't off and on. They were more like we got together and had that connection, and then our cycle ended, and we moved forward as our paths. But yeah, with the twin flame, yeah, that was a lot.
So, so for people that are listening, can you kind of go over what a twin flame is and like kind of what that consists of?
Yeah, so the twin flame, there's different definitions that I've found online, but the one that really resonates with me is that they really bring out the shadow side of yourself, and they really bring out a lot of triggers. And that's why you mentioned like it's so intense. It's just so energetically intense. And when we have that cycle of twin flame, and or like are going through the cycle of twin flame, if you don't face those triggers, and you don't heal those parts of yourself, then it's just going to continue, and that intense energy is going to keep on coming up. And so what I've learned, and then what resonates with me, is that when you complete your cycle with your twin flame, then you allow yourself to bring in your divine life partner. And twin flames are rooted in a relationship about truth. And sometimes the truth isn't something that we want to look at. So facing those truths about yourself, it allows you to bring in that relationship that's more rooted in unconditional love. And it doesn't mean like everything's like pretty and unconditional loving with your divine life partner. It's just more that there's that stronger foundation that you have between you and your relationship, because you broke down that rocky foundation that you experienced with a twin flame. And yeah, just pretty much going through that cycle so that you can build a stronger foundation for yourself.
Right, right, yeah, and I imagine that that process is, almost kind of, you're kind of shattering the old to kind of bring in the new, with that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that partner. So I'm
Yeah, and
curious,
oh,
like, was there like, what was like one big truth that you kind of navigated and went through in that relationship?
really, it was just about attachment, like recognizing when I was attached to something versus when I wholeheartedly, unconditionally loved something or someone. Um, because now when I notice myself being like thinking about all these situations that haven't happened yet, and just like really wanting to be with them, that's like when I'm attached. And not and I really just imagine myself gripping onto them energetically, of like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna follow you energetically because I want to be with you and do this and this and this. But really, when you hold on to something, you're actually pushing something further away. And so all about the concept of letting go, of like letting them be free allows you to be free.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's very beautifully put. Yeah, when you were feeling that trigger of attachment, like when you were kind of going through it and navigating through it and processing it, where did you kind of find that, like where it was stemming from exactly?
I'm not entirely sure, because really the process of attachment, of like recognizing when he was my twin flame, or like learning when he was my twin flame, and finally setting that text of gratitude, that's probably like an 8-month process.
Wow.
So I was going through these cycles of attachment throughout this time, and every time I sent him a text, one thing I had of like hoping that he would reply back, that was like a sign of attachment that I had, rather than just sending it and like letting it be. um, yeah, so it was something that I had to continually cycle through. But through that, every time I would like be more intentional with something that I would send, eventually it would come to a point where like I just feel like sending this, and that's it. Like I'm just putting it out there, and that's it. And so it was definitely a long process. Also, everything that I'm saying, I know it's like short, but it's really a lot longer. Like
Yeah.
my experience was a lot longer. And yeah, like I said, that it was about 8 months since I found out he was my twin flame and finally sent that text of gratitude. But I, through that, I just feel like all that energy of attachment had to accumulate so that I can finally express that gratitude, and really let a lot of that energy go. And so it, I don't know if I answered your question, but
I mean, I get it. You know, this process itself is like, oh my gosh, it's just all over the place and it's complicated. I actually found, well, I sort of found my twin flame like a little while ago, and I'm kind of been, you know, in this journey with him as well. You know, we were in an open relationship for quite some time, and that kind of triggered my attachment, and a lot of like trauma that I experienced in my childhood. So I'm kind of in that middle of the process. So I totally understand when you say
yay.
it's like
Hmm.
long and it's complicated, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, and not necessarily every twin flame will last for like years and years and years. Sometimes it's like your cycle is 3 months, or your cycle, it's always unique to everyone's journey. It's just like that willingness to be aware of it and to move through it and to heal through it. That is just what is unique to you. And so for me, it just happened to be 16 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, wow. Yeah, what a journey. And so talk to me a little bit about, you know, what's happening currently. You know, so you have found your like divine life partner. Can you talk to me about that relationship and kind of the processes that you both go to?
Yeah, it's very expansive, and we go through our uncomfortable moments too. That we still have our own triggers, especially through our relationship. And so when we have uncomfortable moments together, or like if he's going through something, then I'm here to help him. If I have my cup full, and vice versa. If like I'm going through something, if he has this cup full, he'll help me because he's also a Reiki practitioner. And so and then sometimes when, we're both going through the feels, we make it a priority to like give each other space, because if we continuously like stay together when we're in that energy, then it's just going to continue to lower our vibration. But when we take that time to ourselves and really recharge and have that time to reflect, we can come back with a conscious awareness of okay, how can we move forward? How can we heal through this? Because we both recognize that we're going through it for a reason, and we're experiencing the triggers for a reason, and how can we heal through it. And so we do a lot of breath work together. We do yoga and we like meditate together. And for us, we're actually now doing in-person work. So well, I don't want to like share his news, but for me, I'm hosting heart healing circles and experiences now at Kundalini Collective. And so that's really exciting. And if he feels called to also facilitate, then he can do so as well. But yeah, it's been beautiful, although it's been also uncomfortable because we all have our ups and downs. But having that conscious awareness, it makes so much of a difference, because before I would be in relationships that would just be really reactive and, be blaming. And I mean, even me, like I would be blaming. And so stepping away from that and just having that time to reflect and be more conscious about why it's happening, that's been a really huge help for the foundation for a relationship.
No, that's really awesome. Yeah, I mean, yeah, wow, what a journey that you've had so far. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Can you kind of talk to me about what the process looks like for you when you are triggered in the moment, and kind of like the physical things that you'll do to kind of move through that?
For me, I just noticed that I just really tense up.
Yeah.
I was triggered a lot this week, so it's kind of like fresh in my mind. But yeah, I noticed myself getting really shaky, and tensing up, and just feel like my mind is racing for all these different scenarios. And it really, I really need to just take time for myself, but also at the same time express what I'm feeling, to somebody who can hold that safe space for me in that present moment. So I usually express it to J-Roll, my partner, or maybe like a friend who I feel like calling out to or like reaching out to at that time. And so, yeah, just really recognizing that I can't do all of this alone as well when I feel these triggers, and that I didn't get here like right now without any help from all the beautiful practitioners and healers and energy workers and readers that I've connected with throughout the past several years. And so I always feel like we're here to help each other, and it's really important to be open to receive that help. Otherwise, it's a lot harder to it's a lot harder to receive it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I that you kind of bring up a really interesting point there. Just like the practice of receiving. I know that a lot of us have a difficult time receiving that. I know I do. I personally have a hard time receiving things. Stems from my childhood, and I think maybe from media and society. Maybe just feeling um, like it's best to give rather than receive. But then that can
Mm-hmm.
also, kind of lead us in these unhealthy patterns. So, can you kind of talk to me about receiving and kind of how that process has changed for you? What has helped you kind of learn how to receive a little bit better in life?
Yeah, I've had a really big problem with receiving too for most of my life. And so that's something I have been working with. And for me, especially since I started Lots of Love Club, I recognize that I have difficulty receiving, especially when it comes to money. And so I've been really healing that relationship with money over the past year, and really allowing myself to be more grateful for, when money comes in, and just be more intentional for whenever I give and receive money. And so it's always a two-way street. And when we give, I always was the type of person to just always give to. We deplete our cup, and we allow ourselves to get drained, or to get exhausted, or to get burnt out. And I've gotten burnt out a lot in my life, especially when I was in the film industry. And so recognizing that it's a two-way street allows you to continue to have that pattern of being a circle. um, and so when we do give, it's an energy exchange to receive. And so if we're giving too much, we're giving out our energy, and that's why we get burnt. And so practicing receiving and being open to receive is something that can be a doozy to like practice. But something that I like to do is that I always express gratitude for whenever I do receive something, whether it's money or a gift, a hug, and just be more mindful of whether or not I am expressing gratitude for it. Because before, I grew up as an ungrateful child, actually. And I remember my mom would always tell me that you're so ungrateful, like of all the things that I do for you. And looking back, I was like, yeah, I was taking her for granted, because I was just going through these questions of like, why am I here? Like, why is my family not understand me? Like, why can't I do the things that I want to do? And so it brought me out of being grateful for the things that she was letting me do and like was giving me at the time. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where it takes constant practice, but expressing gratitude is definitely one way to practice receiving more. And it'll be uncomfortable at first, especially if you haven't been open to receiving as much as you are compared to giving. But yeah, just having that conscious intention and awareness to express gratitude and recognize that the things that are being brought to you are here for you to learn and to expand even more.
Right, right. Yeah, that's such a big thing too. Because I've noticed in my journey, like if for me, if there's any sort of like intention or feeling of like, oh no, I don't deserve this, or I don't feel it, it kind of blocks me off of like me actually like things coming in and me receiving things and kind of like being um in flow in life as opposed to just blocking it off. So I completely understand. Um, So that's interesting that you bring up like that moment with your mom. Can you talk to me maybe like of some moments with your family members that kind of facilitated that healing for you?
Yeah, I mean, I always had a rocky relationship with my mom most of my life. I like moved out abruptly one day, and I like slept in my car for 4 days, and I told myself I'm not going back home until I find an apartment to rent. And so I did. And so I texted my mom. I was like, "Hey, mom, let's go out to dinner." And then at dinner, I was like, "I'm moving out," and she's like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "Yeah, I did. I submitted my application. I'm moving downtown." And I mean, back then, like downtown was not the spot. It was like pretty sketchy. So my mom was also shocked. She was like, "You're what? You're moving downtown?" Um, but it was one of those things I felt like I had to do because I was constantly in that environment that brought me down, or like I felt like I was being brought down. But then now looking back, it's just I created those for myself, like the feeling of being brought down and like the toxic environment. But at the same time, I just couldn't handle being at home anymore because there wasn't change happening. It was just the same patterns, same stories being told to me and around over and over again. I just didn't want those stories in my life anymore. And so when I moved out, that's really what's like catapulted my healing journey. Although I didn't have that intention to have like go through a healing journey, it was just something that my heart really felt called to do because it wanted something more. Like it wanted to change, it wanted to open up, it wanted to expand. And so through my healing journey, I actually noticed that me and my mom have a better relationship now. She's actually open. I've done energy work on her, and she's a nurse, so she's like super science,
Yeah,
super
yeah,
science based and super Western medicine. And so it's something that I never thought would happen, but because I worked on myself and I healed on myself, when I mentioned like in the very beginning is like it ripples out. And people feel that energetically, whether they're conscious about it or not. And so I mean, sometimes I still get triggered. Like my mom would say something and be like, okay, I don't want to deal with this right now.
yeah.
But it'll come up again because I don't want to deal with that right now. But it definitely happens less and less in terms of me getting triggered by my mom. And yeah, it's just been crazy to see. Like, I literally would be the type of person that would like yell and fight my mom and like swear and call her bad words and like yeah, looking at me now, you'd probably like, you did what? Like you don't seem that type of person to you're like Rosemary, what? But yeah, I mean, and also those are the things that we don't talk about. Like we don't recognize or we don't know that these are happening in the home because we don't speak about it or we don't share it. And that's why it's harder for us. I feel like it was harder for me to share it because nobody else was talking about it too. So that's also why like I felt very closed in, like I felt like I couldn't speak my truth, I couldn't share anything. And so I actually remember telling this story to somebody else where they were going through domestic violence in their family, and it actually really helped them because it gave them hope for the person who was like fighting in their family to also heal as well, because like I was that person too. And so it always just boils down to like your willingness to change, and also listening to your heart and your intuition on wanting to change or like feeling the need like that for the time to change. And it will be uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Always will be in the first part.
absolutely. So when you said that you kind of made that transition out of your family's home, what year was that? Just like so we have like a time frame.
I want to say I was 22. So like I have it on my website. I just don't remember. So that was like 20, what year is it? 2013-ish. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I moved out to live on my own, and that was really dark because I mean, a lot of the times when spent, um, like spent all the times with myself, it ended up being a lot of depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts, and just having those resurface again. So that was a really dark time. Although I loved living by myself, I felt so free, and I'm like, oh, I can do anything that I want.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
for sure. But then like when you're alone, like you kind of have to sit with your darker parts, the parts like these old stories and things that maybe you've like kind of pushed down over time. I'm also curious too, because you mentioned, in your family's home, you're kind of there dealing with, certain stories, certain narratives that you no longer want to be a part of. What were a few of those narratives and stories that you kind of like branched off of and kind of cut?
I've been very more mindful of like blaming,
Yeah.
because there was a lot of blaming that happened in my family, and also a lot of judgment, huge amounts of judgment, and also it's not to their fault. Like that's what they were taught, and because of that, I've also have more compassion towards my family, and recognizing that they treated me that way because that's how they were taught. And so my perception of love actually also got really skewed because of my environment in my family, because they would tell me, well, actually they actually don't really, they didn't express that they loved me, but they would say that in ways of like buying things for me, and um, just having it be in a way that didn't resonate with me. And so recognizing that for what it was and learning from that has been a really big part of my journey as well. But really a lot of things were like the judgment, mostly through my family. I didn't want to be that person who would judge others, um, and really unshedding those layers has been a long process as well, because that's what I've been living with for like 22 years. And so yeah, just being more mindful, and like I said, blaming as well. I tend to say like you blank, but that's not me taking responsibility for me. And so just recognizing that, um, yeah, it's not something that I can assume.
Yeah.
And just knowing what is going through in me, and recognizing what goes through in me is all I can really be sure of.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's super huge. Like, just the practice of not blaming and kind of seeing both parties. And, like, you kind of mention, like, oh, your parents aren't to blame for any of that stuff because that's kind of what they were brought up with. That's their generation. And it struck a chord with me because I am sort of dealing with that in my own personal journey with my family. Um, I come from a Filipino culture, so communicating emotions and feeling was not something that was a big part of my background. And I grew up Catholic, I grew up Filipino, pretty traditional, and there was like a lot of judging in my
Mhm.
family system. So I'm kind of like working through a lot of that stuff in my journey. Um, so yeah, talk to me about that process, because it's that family systems, family cycles, healing generational traumas, that is so fascinating to me. Can you kind of just talk about like where you were at that time in your life, and then kind of where you're at now with that, with family systems and healing and all that?
When I moved out and, was going through that dark time when I lived by myself, that's kind of what sparked my healing journey. And I would go to like healing circles and meditations. And I was just also really fascinated at the whole topic of like spirituality and readings and all that. And so being very curious and wanting to learn more, I just really dived into the rabbit hole when that happened. And I experienced a few energy healing modalities like Reiki and emotion code. Emotion code is what I do as a practitioner. But I didn't really recognize like how much work I was doing at the time. It was kind of because it sparked joy in me. It was something that wasn't, hard and gruesome. It was something that I just really enjoyed doing. But because I really enjoyed doing it and I just went into it, it just really led me up to today where I am now. And so I'm the type of person who really enjoys learning about different modalities and different ways to heal, because there's so many different ways. Like one is breath work, maybe somebody like sound healing. And that's what I learned too when I started doing work as an emotion code practitioner, is that one person may not resonate with emotion code, but maybe they resonate with Reiki.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that allowed me to step down from my ego, because my ego was like, everyone needs emotion code, everyone needs healing. But um, recognizing that not everyone's willing to do the healing work, and for whoever is willing, that they're going to be called to whoever it is that they're called to work with. And so that was because, looking back, I was thinking about how my journey started. I i wasn't somebody who would feel like they were getting like pressured to do Reiki or emotion code. It was something I kind of just fell into, and went with that flow to experience that. And so, man, it's just so hard to like condense all these things because it happened in like three
Yeah,
years.
yeah. Honestly, there's no need to condense to get it. It's like all over, it's just all over the place, and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because I just love trying out different things, and I'm a very trial and error person. And so if one thing really works for me, then I keep on doing that. And but at the same time, if I try something, like maybe I was supposed to do it in that moment, but if it didn't resonate with me, then it didn't resonate with me, and I tried it. But it at least helped in some form, because every step that you take is definitely a huge um, moment forward, or momentum forward, to your healing journey, and your bigger vision in life of what you want for yourself.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I am going to pause this real quick because I keep getting notifications on my phone, so I just want to make sure it's turned off. So give me one second.
Okay.
Okay, back again. So,
Yay.
um, so we were kind of on, the topic of finding different healing practices, and it kind of just sort of differs between people. What is a healing practice that works for you that you've found?
For me, well, the reason why I got certified into it was because it really worked for me. And so it's a motion code. And what it does, it specifically releases trapped emotions that are stuck in the body due to really high energetic events, whether it's trauma or heartbreaking events, or just emotions that we didn't allow ourselves to feel, essentially. And so, one of my favorite parts about it is called the heart wall, which is an energetic wall around our heart that we usually build when we get hurt. We're like, oh, well, I don't want to get hurt again as much next time. I'm going to like protect it. But by actually protecting it, you're allowing yourself to not give and receive as much, because there is that barrier. And so I love helping people break down their heart walls. And everyone has different thicknesses of heart walls. You can have one, you can have four, but also at the same time, everyone's different in terms of what their material is made out of, and it's something that's just fun to find out. And so that, I really felt like, helped me dive deeper into my journey as well, because it allowed me to receive, um, and really just let go of that energetic barrier to just have more of that two-way giving and receiving.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure you found that some people have more layers than others, right, in your journey.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
w- how can one kind of feel into themselves to know how many layers they're dealing with around their heart?
So something that I do, so when I do emotion code, I use my pendulum, and how we get to the trapped emotion is that we actually tap into your subconscious, because your subconscious is kind of like the computer database for your life, and also what your ancestors have gone through. And so when it comes to tapping into yourself, it takes practice. Also, when I first used my pendulum, it was not swinging at all. And I was like sad. I was like, why
You're
isn't
like,
it
what?
swinging? But something that I like to do to ask my body, like if I don't have my pendulum, is that when I have a statement that it's true, my body moves forward. And when I have a body that's false, my body moves backwards. And so, um, yeah, well, first you have to like calibrate yourself. And usually how to calibrate yourself is like you say your name. So like, my name is Rosemary, and just kind of calibrate to see how your body moves.
Mm,
Um, and then if I said my name is Maya, then my body would naturally sway backwards, because that's not something that's true to me. And so with that, you can ask like, do I have a heart wall? And your body like swings back or forth, and you can ask like, how many heart walls do I have? And you can be like, do I have one? Do I have two? Do I have three? And so that's something that I haven't actually told somebody else to do, because I mean, I'm usually the one that doing the finding it out for them. But that's definitely something that you could do. I mean, I fully believe that we can all have the ability to do this. It's just, like I said earlier, it all boils down to like your willingness and how eager and joyful you are when it comes to learning and doing it for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've ever heard someone kind of talk about it in that way. So essentially, you're kind of there with your body, and you kind of have to just like ask yourself, like, whatever that intention is or whatever the question is. And then you kind of just like monitor and see how your body moves. Is that kind of how it is?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a form of muscle testing.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's called the sway method.
Yeah.
But originally emotion code practitioners are taught to use muscle testing, which is to like also ask your body and have the body answer you. Um, and so because I didn't want to like constantly use my hand or my body when I'm working with clients, the pendulum, which I adopted from my emotion code practitioner, has been something that I love to use, and it's a lot easier for them to also see like the answers, because it's for me like a yes answer is swinging clockwise, and then a no answer is swinging forwards and backwards. And so it's a lot easier, especially on a Zoom call, to see the differences of the answer.
That's so fascinating. So have you been working with your clients lately through Zoom, or has it been, kind of like a hybrid type thing lately?
Like 90, like during COVID, I definitely was doing all of them through Zoom. And I had a few people I would work with in person, but I prefer doing it in Zoom, just because it's like convenient. You don't have to hop out of your bed. You're like, you can be in your pajamas. And it doesn't make it any less like having it in person or having it distance. The energy is just as effective. And one way they kind of describe how energy healing works through Zoom is like it's kind of like a cell phone. Like when you pick up, you're connected, but when you hang up, you're disconnected. And so after every client, I always disconnect my connection with them so that they get their energy back and I get my energy back. And so it's been really lovely, like, connecting with people, especially outside of Vegas. So yeah, I'm just really grateful we can do this through Zoom. Otherwise, I would have no idea how I would move through COVID.
Yeah, thank God for Zoom. I mean, I think it's great that our connections can kind of travel even through like a screen. I mean, of course, it's different, but at least we have the ability to do that, and yeah, that's truly wonderful. Um, yeah, so that's amazing. The work that you're doing is incredible, and you're just kind of going through, the communities around the world, and kind of just helping them heal and activate their hearts, which is super exciting. What's kind of what do you have planned for the future, or what are some things that you're looking forward to when it comes to your healing journey?
So right now I am doing once a month heart healing circles and experiences at Kundalini Collective, which I mentioned earlier. So that if you are in Vegas and want to join, it's every last Sunday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And what's really cool for me, as I've been processing through like my gifts and my inner truth, is that I've actually been singing and using sound healing. I also forgot to mention sound healing has been a really big part of my healing journey too, because I've grown up with music. I like played instruments. I used to go to a lot of raves.
Yeah, me
And
too.
yeah, and it's also really cool to connect with producers who like produce more consciously. Like one of the breath works exercises that I do is by Shiva Rasa, and she actually used to be a DJ. Well, I mean, she still is, but she was heavily in that scene. And but then she went within because she realized it was like a very toxic environment, and so now she creates like um, production or like music productions and tracks that are more intentional and are more healing. And so yeah, I've been diving really more into like shamanic tools. So that'll be part of my once a month heart healing circles, and really just allowing myself to sing, because I had a lot of trauma singing as well. Like I had a story where my mom took me to get singing lessons, and the instructor was like, "This girl's voice is too nasally." So that was a story that
Wow.
continuously repeated in my mind. And that's why I was so scared to sing in
Yeah.
public. I mean, I'd always love to sing by myself or like in the car.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like I mean, I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. Like they belt, at home or like in their car. But when it comes to singing in public, they're like, oh, no, 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 I'm okay. I'm
Yeah.
terrified.
Unless you're like, you're like a trained singer and that's kind of like what you want to do or whatever. But I totally understand. It's like expression. You're just expressing yourself. And if you kind of experience that as a child, then you're sort of taught like, oh, if I, try to express that I could get rejected or whatever emotions are kind of, in that body from that memory. So yeah, that's fascinating. Like, can you talk to me about how you move through that specific trigger with the singing and like the freedom to express and kind of changing that narrative?
For me, it really helps to have a support system because when I first started doing the singing, and I'm not singing like words that you can understand. It's actually something similar. It's like light language. It's singing just from light and love, and it's something that cannot be comprehended by our brain, but our energy and our soul and our heart just knows that it's healing and that it's here to help us open up our hearts. And so I started doing it like on friends, one-on-one. Um, and my quantum coach, I did it on her, and she, because she just loves like trying to figure out things. She's like, oh my gosh, I want you to keep doing it so I could see what happens and kind of, get that data and that
Mm-hmm.
scientific evidence. Um, but I love her because she also bridges science and spirituality. That's something I love to do, just bringing those two together. Because I grew up thinking that like they're two separate things, but really like energy in science and energy in spirituality, it's the same thing. So
Connected. Yeah.
mm-hmm. And so yeah, and then I did it with a group of people at my quantum coach's house. And so just having a group of people who are really willing and open to receive, that's such a huge part. And also having a group that's not judging you for what you're doing, that has really helped me move through my triggers. Because I remember that night before I did that group circle at her house, I was going through a lot. Like my shoulder, it was interesting. My physical reactions were like my shoulders and my neck were really tender. Like
Mm,
they've never really been tender before, but it was like a painful kind of tender.
yeah.
But like in terms of energy centers, that's like where the throat is. And so there
Yeah.
was a lot going on before I, had that experience and facilitated that experience, because there was a lot of release going on so that I can show up, with my wholehearted truth and just channel whatever it is that I was meant to channel for those who were there for the experience.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I am curious also because you had mentioned that like this area of the body was kind of tense in that moment. I noticed that with me personally, my throat and then also my sacral are usually pretty tense and can be quite heavy sometimes in my life. So, my question for you is what parts of your body do you find are um, heavier, more on the heavier side, or you feel like times in your life you've noticed that they've been more like clogged up, and kind of like what stories are attached to those and like what triggers are attached to those?
It always just depends on like what I'm feeling at that present moment. Um, because whatever trigger I do experience, that's what I'm supposed to focus on at that present moment. And so sometimes like when that happened the night before the experience, I was supposed to focus on my throat and my shoulders. But before, like in terms of sacral, I noticed that like if I have like a low sex drive, then that's what I'm supposed to focus on. Or if I'm or if I'm feeling like really heavy hearted, then there's something I got to work on in my heart at that time. So it always just depends for whatever it is that I'm going through. And so and when I was feeling the tenseness in the shoulder, I was like, gosh, this is really annoying, but I know that I'm going through this for a reason, even though it's like painful right now. So yeah, just shifting that perspective instead of like, why is this happening to me, it's more like, okay, I know this is happening and I'm just going to feel it and move through it because I know there's something even bigger on the other side when I set that intention to move through it and feel it and let it go and be grateful for it.
Right, and just kind of accepting that it's there for you to learn from, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
just being open to the opportunity to heal. Because honestly, any opportunity to heal, it's super fucking uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
so, but man, at the end of that process is freedom, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's really beautiful about, I mean, just the healing process, healing journey, and then also just you trying to facilitate that space for people, right? Like trying to help people activate their hearts. Because I think at the end of that too is also freedom, because you're able to open up and kind of build, you know, stronger relationships with the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can you kind of talk to me about like how that has translated, you know, with your relationships, not just like romantic, but just like family, friends, all of that? Like, what have you, through your practices, what have you noticed in your relationships that's improved?
I just noticed more about how I implement my boundaries. Um, and when it comes to boundaries, because I used to say yes to everyone and be like, yeah, I'll hang out, I'll hang out, I'll hang out, or like I'll connect. But now just recognizing when I need time for myself and expressing that as well has been a huge shift for me in my relationships. Because for those who really are here to support you and are compassionate on your own journey and your unique journey, they'll understand because they're going through that journey as well. And so the relationships that I surround myself now are people who are willing to heal, being open to face themselves in their shadows and recognizing that we're all going through our own healing journey. And so when I also like connect with somebody who isn't really like into this world yet, I just really set the intention to be myself and speak my truth because maybe something will resonate with them. Um, but if not, then that's fine. I was just at least speaking my truth and recognizing that whatever was meant to be said was meant to be said. Because I
Yeah.
used to always beat myself up with like, oh, I should have said this, I should have said that.
Yeah, absolutely. I do that too. Like in conversation, sometimes with people, like I'll have the conversation, and then like a few hours later, I'm like, man, I should have said that. I should have said that. But really, you know, it's what, you know, why the judgment, you know? And also, if there is judgment, it's also okay too, you know? I mean,
Hmm.
like me personally, in my practice, I'm just trying to just be okay with whatever comes up and to kind of create like a better relationship with those traumas and just anything that feels uncomfy.
Hmm.
Essentially.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, yeah, it's a pretty crazy journey, that's for sure. Um,
Yay.
but yeah, in just in terms of like like a broken heart, right? Because I know that in your journey, that's kind of like a big discussion. It's, you know, a lot of you pour a lot of your energy into healing that. Can you tell me a little bit about what that journey looked like for you? Like, you know, in detail, like the transitioning out of a broken heart and um, yeah, kind of just what that felt like for you.
Well, let me tell you, I got my heart broken a lot. So that's why I was like,
I feel you. I feel
which
you.
one do I talk about?
Whatever you feel called to talk about, whatever comes up for you.
Well, for me, it just stems back to the first one who broke up with me because usually I'm not the person who makes the move to break up with them because I recognize that like okay, the cycle's over. Not consciously recognizing that the cycle's over, but I just felt like it was something that needed to end at that time. And so in terms of like romantic relationships. And so my he's my good friend now. He lives in Chicago. He broke up with me like a week before prom. So it was devastating. And that was actually my first time I experienced depression. Like I couldn't eat for 2 weeks. I lost a lot of weight. And so it was one of those things where I tried to be like, oh, let's still be friends, and try to work things out. Because I mean, you're with somebody for so long, and like you still want that connection. And so that's actually the first time I went to therapy, and I only went to one session. It was like at my college, like they were having therapists there for students, and I just remember bawling my eyes out. And they said that, oh, you must really love him, huh? Because I'm like bawling my eyes out, and I'm just like, yes. But looking back, it was because I didn't love myself,
Yeah.
and recognizing that my soul and was just crying for me to return back to me because I was so attached to him. And so at the time I wasn't conscious about the concept of self-love, but because of like looking back, I recognized that that was an act of me wanting to love myself again.
Yeah.
And so I really see breakups as a blessing in disguise because it's really here to catalyze you to love yourself again and return back to your inner truth and the love that's always been inside of you. Because when we are attached to someone, we're seeking that external influence when really that it's all internal. Like we all have that love that you're looking for. And so yeah, that was a really just big pivotal moment for me. And as the years went by, he actually moved to college in Chicago. That's why he lives there. I ended up just like visiting him a lot, and we were really good friends still. I mean, we still are. And my partners actually met him. One time my partner and I went, or J Roll and I went to Japan, and he was actually there for a work trip at the same time. So we all got to meet up and like eat
Oh,
ramen together. So
how crazy is
that's like
that?
that's what I envision for the world, where all of us are um loving towards the people that we used to be with, despite all the hard moments that we've gone through in terms of heartbreak and trauma,
Yeah.
and really recognize and that we can be compassionate to whatever they went through. And because like I said, with my family, like that's what they were taught, and so that's what they knew, and that's how they expressed it. And so yeah, it's definitely something that I never thought I would experience. And every time I broke up with somebody too, it was also really hard and uncomfortable, because in the moment I was like, well, I feel bad because like I know I'm breaking their heart, but at the same time I'm like, okay, well, I don't actually know how they feel. And so just honoring myself and speaking my truth and recognizing that, okay, this relationship is something that well, now I would say like, oh, this relationship isn't like resonating anymore or like aligning.
Right.
um but back then it was definitely a lot messier than that, of like, oh, let's break up, or what. I don't even remember what I said like back then when I would break up with somebody. But yeah, I just knew that our cycle was ending for that moment in time to be intimate and to be romantic with each other. So yeah.
That's okay. So let me backtrack because when you guys all ran into each other in Japan, was that like a serendipitous moment or was that
Oh
so?
no. No, it was serendipitous that we were all there. Like we were both there, but it's not like we like ran into the street and together in Japan. It was more like he's like, "Oh, I'm here in Japan." I'm like, "What the heck? We're here too. Let's meet up." So it was like planned. Yeah.
Honestly, still, that's really cool because I mean, I don't know, you just have that connection with this person and then all of a sudden you're both going to the same place. I just that's such a cool moment. How did you feel when that all happened, when it all came together?
Well, I mean, they've met before, like when we were in Vegas, like because he sometimes visits Vegas, um, and so it was just really cool that we were in a different country and we all get to meet up and experience. Well, Japan's like my it resonates with my heart and soul so much. Like I love Japan so much, so it was really cool to meet up. Like, I call it my soul home, to meet up in my soul home, and I
Oh,
feel like yeah, yeah, and Jiro loves Japan too. I don't know how he feels about Japan, like my friend, but it was just cool that he was there for work.
yeah, no, absolutely. So, um, a question that came up when you were explaining that story is I feel like a lot of people have a challenging time, kind of reconnecting with their ex partners or someone from their past once they've disconnected. I know I have that challenge in my life. That's something that I'm working through. What is your perspective and advice for someone or people who, you know, are trying to reconnect with that partner, or um, is trying to just kind of build and recreate a new relationship with someone from their past? Like, what is your perspective on that? Does it always happen? Does it always work? Yeah, what are some things that people can kind of like feel into for that?
Well, every situation is different. And so I strongly believe in divine timing. And so these connections that I end up like still keeping after we, ended our romantic relationships, it was, I had an intention to continue to be friends, but it was not something that I really actively worked on, because I guess my number one advice is to just let it go and to focus on yourself. Um, and that's why breakups are such a huge catalyst to return back to self-love. It's because there is no second person there to kind of like lean on, um, and just realize that, like I mentioned earlier, like the love that you're looking for is inside. And so when you work on yourself, maybe you can reconnect later, maybe you're not meant to, because maybe that's what was meant for your journey. And so yeah, I guess short and simple, my simple advice is to let it go. Although I know it sounds easier said than done, but yeah, letting it go is a lot easier when you focus on yourself and heal yourself and recognize that you're going through this, heartbreak and this pain because your soul is and your heart is telling you return back to yourself. Like, I want you to love you instead of trying to be connecting with this other person again, because it's really asking to connect with yourself. And we're all we're all reflections of each other. At least that's what I strongly believe in. And so recognizing that because that person isn't there anymore, it's giving you that permission to look at yourself again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually quite beautiful how relationships kind of do that for you, or you know, heartbreaks or splitting up. It's kind of like what you said. It's like a this little message from, you know, the universe or whoever is watching over us to kind of come back to, you know, our inner self. And I mean, I know that that was what it was for me when I went through my crazy like heartbreak. You know, I was like kind of in a dysfunctional relationship for a little while, going to raves and, you know, just not being able to see myself in that. You know, I think I got a little lost after a little while. So yeah, once we had split up, it was kind of like, okay, Maya, you're gonna have to face yourself. You're gonna have to face your shit, because you honestly were never taught. You like, my family didn't, you know, didn't express any of those things, and so I didn't know how to like face any of my stuff. So yeah, I think it's beautiful that you mentioned that, because it really can be like an opportunity for us to come back to ourselves. It can be quite uncomfortable. So what is your advice for people who are kind of in that transition and, you know, kind of have that opportunity to face some of their darker things?
Definitely reach out to somebody.
Yeah.
Because yeah, like I mentioned before too, like when I was going through those dark times with myself, I had to reach out to somebody. But it wasn't, for me, it wasn't one of those things where like, oh, I specifically reached out to this person. It was more like the universe was gave me this information of like, oh, these healing circles happen here in Vegas, like and so that's something that I felt like I needed to help me through my journey. And so really listening to your intuition, and to your heart, and really tuning into that. I usually, take breaths and focus on my heart to really focus on that heart space. Um, and so, yeah, just really reach out, especially someone who has gone through it, and who has healed from it, because um, they went through that so that they can teach what they learned and what they experienced to others who have gone through that as well. And I mean, that's why I work with my quantum coach, and she specifically helps people like tap into her gifts or tap into their spiritual gifts. And so, I mean, she went through that struggle, but she went through it, experienced it, learned from it, and now like others go to her. And so yeah, just reach out to somebody who really focuses on I mean yes, this is me, but like reach out to somebody who you resonate with to help you open up your heart and to move through that so that it's a lot easier. I'm definitely not the only person who does this type of work of like heart activating and heart opening, but that's why I really had to learn that from myself, is that some people, when they do this healing work, not everyone is going to resonate with you or the modality that you do, but I love to help connect people to somebody that they might resonate with and see how that connection works for them. But it's funny because like, I have a certain reader that I go to in Vegas, and I've like referred her to all of my friends. Basically all of my friends go to her now, and basically a lot of my friends go to my quantum coach, so it's their quantum coach. So it's somehow just have fell into a group that we're all supporting each other and all helping each other rise up. And so I've always been the type of person who would change friend groups like every single year. And so I feel like now there's like that really strong foundation of friendships that I'm going through life with, because we're all just raising each other up, and it'll only expand from here. Like it's not just limited to them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful that that you're able to kind of connect all your friends to, your healers and people that you've worked with. Um, I kind of want to touch on that too, just like the topic of friendships, the topic of tribes, all that stuff. You had mentioned that it kind of took you kind of like went through, a lot of different friend groups. So can you kind of talk to me about that journey and why that was and what that process looked like?
Yeah, I just always felt different. But that was like a story I would tell myself. But as I moved and grew through my journey, um, like my energy was shifting too. And so, for example, like I would be really into raves. So I would have that friend group, like I would always go to raves with. But then I fell out of that cycle of going to raves, and I went to more like local downtown Las Vegas events. And so then I had those friend groups, and then I had my job at Vegas.com, so that they were my friend group. And so as my chapters were closing and starting, then that's what shifted with my relationships too. And so recognizing that the people who you surround yourself with too are they're really influencing you too on your journey, because you're always around them, you're always around their energy. And so being mindful of who you are or who you're around can really help you accelerate or decelerate. I don't, well, not decelerate. That's not a word that I wanted to say, but it depending on who you're with, it'll either accelerate you or you aren't growing as much.
Mm.
That was not really well put, but
No,
I hope you get me.
that's great. I totally get it. Yeah, decelerate. Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, I recognize like throughout 2020 that it's hard for me to explain things, because I really love to help people go through experiences, and so that's why I'm really excited to do the in-person experiences, because it's not going to be so much me talking. Like I'm going to be like channeling a guided meditation, but it's more so the sound is helping you experience whatever it is that you need to experience internally, because that's where all the healing happens. It's all internal, and all healing is self-healing. And so even though I say I'm a heart healing practitioner, you're really doing the healing on your heart. I'm just helping facilitate your own healing, and being a conduit to connect more to your heart. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely. You're
yeah,
kind of
that's
that bridge for people,
mm-hmm.
which is awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
So I kind of want to segue. I have like a list of just like sort of fun-ish question. They're sort of fun. They're still deep, but they're fun. But if you feel called to and open to, I'd like to hear, about what you think about them and kind of what comes up.
Sure.
So my first question to you is, when was the last time you felt vulnerable?
um I don't know, I feel like I'm vulnerable right now.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, how are you feeling right now? What's coming up? What's the process?
For me, I don't know. It's like my shoulders are tense, but my shoulders are usually tense. So I've been really focusing more around my shoulders and neck. And yeah, did get amplified a couple weeks ago right before I did the circle. Uh, but yeah, I mean, definitely feel vulnerable right now, sharing my stories and expressing like what I went through and all the experiences that the really crappy experiences that I went through that really in the end weren't crappy, but we're here to be a lesson. And so, yeah, right now.
Well,
And I noticed myself being fidgety. So I don't know if you noticed that on the Zoom call.
I didn't notice that at all. I feel like I'm being fidgety because my legs are falling asleep. But I mean, I also felt vulnerable. I think I feel vulnerable no matter what interview I'm doing. It kind of, you would think that after a while I would get used to it, but I always get like, you just never know, and you never know what's
Hmm.
gonna come up, and conversations are so dynamic. So yeah, I think I always do. So, but thank you for being honest. I really appreciate that.
Yay.
um, what do you think your intention in life is, and how has that changed for you?
My intention is to really keep on healing myself so that I can be that radiating light so that others can heal themselves too. And really, I mean, I'm all about the heart. So, really, just helping people open up their heart space and helping them open up their heart space coming from an unconditionally loving place and from an universally loving place. And so, yeah, that's pretty much my intention.
I love it. Okay, so if you could name the season in your life, what would you title it?
A season?
Mhm.
Like pick a season?
Well, if well, if let me rephrase it. If you could title this season in your life, what would it be?
Oh, dang. Change. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
pretty much change. Um, I guess more specifically changing with sound.
Huh. Changing with sound. How so?
Because I'm stepping more into like my shamanic sound gifts. And actually that's something that I was thinking about last night while driving. I was like, I feel like I'm a shamanic sound practitioner because I'm diving more into like shamanic work and honoring, well, I've always honored Mother Nature, but really getting more into the roots of shamanism and using that in my practices. And yeah, just changing with sound.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So you feel like you're kind of experimenting and finding maybe different modalities that could help facilitate to other people, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and really just allowing myself to sing to help others on their healing journey. That's that's what I'm like, well, I guess healing with sound. I don't know, something along those lines. But sound has been a very big part of this season. I mean, just using instruments again, because I haven't been playing instruments at all. I used to play piano and viola,
Wow.
but yeah, I never like. It's so funny because I always wanted to be a drummer because I used to be in drumline in high school, but I would play the keyboard. And
Nice.
so when I got my shamanic drum, I was like, oh, wait, my manifestation came to life. I have a drum now. I'm technically a drummer because I drum this drum. So, yeah.
So, so music and instruments were like a big part of your childhood, right?
Hmm.
So, what moment in time did you like kind of put it to the side? Like, did you have a moment, or did you kind of continue it just like little by little over time?
Well, in terms of playing instruments, I stopped playing viola my second year of college because at that time I was like, why am I paying to play? And I didn't want to pay anymore. And so, but that was the same time where I started going to raves. And so that's how I kept music in my life. I would literally go to a rave every single month. that
Yeah.
was like a lot of money looking back at
It
it.
adds up over time.
It definitely adds up. And so, yeah, I would always go to raves. And it's so funny because one time, like sometimes I go to raves by myself. Like I have friends that go too, but it eventually got to that point where like I just want to go because I want to do me, and I'll meet up with friends if I'm meant to meet up with friends. And so I remember dancing one time, and my friend met up with me. He was like, "Yo, what drug are you taking?" I'm like, "I'm not. I just love the music. Like I just want to dance." Yeah, because I love music so much, and um, my um, my music tastes have changed over the years too. So like also with my friend groups, like my music groups have changed. Yeah, because I mean I grew up very classical, and because I played instruments, and I've always just been open to hearing like all the different genres, and just really listening to what art they were presenting and what they were creating. So yeah, I have no judgment towards music, as or at least I try not to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's cool because it almost seems like music is kind of coming full circle in your life. Like you said that you had a little bit of like a blockage with singing and kind of expressing that part of your body. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you'll incorporate like sound and your voice into your healing practices. So that'll be really
Yay.
cool.
Yeah, I've always wanted a whole set of crystal singing bowls. So far, I got one, so we'll see what else the universe has for me.
Yeah, you got one, so hopefully it'll grow over time. Yeah, that's really exciting. Um, what's a memory from your childhood you most want to remember?
um,
Yeah,
that's funny because remember earlier I was like, I don't remember much from my childhood.
no, I get it.
I'm really blanking. What age is technically childhood?
Shoot, I mean, I guess you know what? Maybe we can just, if you don't remember a whole lot from your childhood, maybe just like whatever comes up for you, like whatever comes up for you in your maybe teenage years or.
Well, it's so funny because a memory came up with my twin flame, but it was something that was funny. It wasn't like it was just funny because when we decided that we were like, oh, let's be boyfriend and girlfriend, and we like I introduced him to my friends. I was like, hey, this is my boyfriend, and we got into the car. We both kind of just sat in the car, and we were like, that was weird. And that really that memory just always makes me laugh, because now I really recognize that labels put us in a box. Like if we're not consciously aware of labels, they really just put us in a box and give us these subconscious expectations of how a relationship should be. And so yeah, that was like another thing that I learned through my relationship with the twin flame, is that especially when I learned he was my twin flame, is that these labels don't define how a relationship should be. It's just whatever it is that you're going through at that moment and accepting it for what it is.
Yeah, just letting it kind of breathe and be whatever it needs to be, kind of thing. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like that memory. And yeah, relationships and introductions can be kind of awkward sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Totally
Yeah,
understand.
and I forgot what happened after that. I think we were like, okay, maybe let's not. But I just don't remember. But that, for some reason, that memory just really stuck out to me.
Awesome. Let's see. What scares you the most?
Not speaking my truth.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a big one of mine too. Have you found that like through your healing journey, you're like more quicker to like kind of be more aware of when you're not speaking your truth?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what does that process like look like? Like what did it look back then and what does it look like now? Like being able to like become aware whether you're not you're speaking your truth.
So back then, I wasn't really like having the intention of speaking my truth. Like when I first started, it was just kind of like, okay, whatever calls to me, whatever sparks joy. And but now, because I've been more intentional about it, um, when I say something like from a place of ego or a place of judgment, or disappointment. That's recognizing when I'm not speaking from my truth. Um, and so when it when I like also post something on Instagram or anything, if I feel like this like friction, or I feel like I'm trying to force something, that I recognize that's not me, like speaking my truth. And so when it comes to like how I am today, just really recognizing when I'm not like when I'm not being accountable for myself, and recognizing and not being honest with myself. Honesty is a really big thing that has always played throughout my life. And so yeah, that's pretty much how I've been going through, like recognizing what I'm saying from my ego, which is like blaming, disappointment, um, attachment, wanting to do something, but it's like trying to force something, or like feeling like it's forced. That's really when I feel like I'm not speaking from my truth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like if you feel it kind of tense in your body and it feels like like you're forcing it as opposed to like moving in flow, kind of with the moment or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what would you tell your past self, and then what would you tell your current self?
Um, my past self, just keep doing you.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the same thing to my current self, just keep doing you.
Yeah, right. Just keep moving forward and do what you need to do.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Cool. And sort of like with your past self, I'm like letting things kind of come to me. Hold on, give me a second.
Yeah, it's all good.
So keep being you. You want to tell yourself, you want to tell your past self, keep being you. So can you elaborate more on that? Like, what are the feelings around that? What is like a moment in time that is kind of connected to that saying?
Well, the reason I said it for both my past and my current is um because if I told my past self something else, like any advice or something, my past self probably wouldn't have listened to it and like acted upon it. So, and I feel like whatever we go through in our past experiences, that was like what was meant to happen at that time. And so, um by just by keep being you, just recognizing that whatever you're doing and however you feel like doing, or like whatever you feel like doing, or whatever you feel like taking action on, that's what is meant to happen for your journey. um and so yeah, I hope that
Yeah.
helped elaborate a little bit on it. But yeah, I mean, if I told me about all this stuff 10 years ago, I probably would have a more closed mind to it. um and going back to the willingness to be open to it, that's like the most important thing when you dive into this work
That's
and
awesome.
like do the healing process. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that, Rosemary. I really appreciate your time and just being able to just talk about your journey and kind of connect for a bit and dive into some of these topics that maybe some of us are maybe a little uncomfortable in talking about or seeing. So I appreciate that. Is there anything else before we go that you want to share with me, or anything that you want to come to the surface?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone to be gentle with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
we definitely need, yeah, we definitely need that. Yeah, especially, I mean, all the time, but especially right now, I think. So yeah, thank you so much. I,
Thank you.
of course, I appreciate you just being open to the Deep Take project. Like I said, I'm in my experimental infant phases with this project. So thank you for being a part of its first season. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I I just felt really called to connect with you. So I really do appreciate just your energy and your time.
Oh, no, thank you for thinking about me and for reaching out. And I'm grateful to be part of your project. And I always love it, like when projects are in like their infant stages because you really don't know where they're going to go next.
Yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, I'll keep you updated. I'm probably going to leave Vegas sometime in the springtime, but I would love to like just grab coffee if you feel comfortable because I know
Oh
COVID.
yeah, I'm totally comfortable.
Oh, cool.
Girl, I'm gonna facilitate like a 20-person circle. Like it's gonna
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would love to like grab coffee and just hang out and just talk about life.
Yeah,
It's,
me
I
too.
Yeah, I love what you do, and I think you're doing incredible work. And yeah, I just appreciate you, and I hope
Aw.
to see you soon in person.
Yeah, and you are too with all the healing work that you're doing. You're doing so much more than you think you're doing. So,
Yeah,
yes.
it's it's been a crazy journey, that's for sure. I have been dealing a lot with like family and stuff, so like healing family cycles. So
Hmm.
that's kind of where I'm at, but
Yeah.
we'll talk about it another time.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you again. This was so lovely to chat, and thank you for asking such wonderful questions. It really made me think of like, oh, wait, yes. When did that happen?
Oh, good. I'm glad. I know I was like it was kind of all over the place, but I tried my best to, you know, kind of explore with you because yeah,
Yeah.
I was just curious. I just wanted to know, a little bit about your backstory. So
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for being open to hear my story. And it was lovely hearing what you have been going through as well. So we'll definitely talk more about it. Yay.
yeah, sounds good.
Yay.
And please enjoy your week. I know that we're still in like the whole Mercury retrograde
Yeah. We're in the
chaos.
shadow phase now.
Shadow phase. So yeah, take care, and I'll check in with
Yay.
you soon.
Yay. Take care. We'll definitely talk again soon.
Okay, sounds
Bye,
good.
Maya.
Bye. Thank you, Rosemary.